because in that 7 years we committed to efficiently provide troops and logistics into Vietnam, and without the Sydney and her escorts this would not have been possible. We didn't have the Sydney, as far as taken by Jeparit and Boonaroo, but it would be difficult. So the Vung Tau service got underway, and the ship had been converted but not really ready for so many troops on board, and it took some time for those troops to become settled into the Navy way. And some of the troops were a little bit upset in Sydney that they had to move out of their mess deck to give way for the green machine to sleep in their area, and the troops had to move into a part of A hangar. And that part of the ship is very hot. The whole lower hangar is bloody hot. The whole ship was hot. It was unbearable at times. But the RAN is always training for war. So Sydney and its escorts fell quickly into that requirement. The accommodation was tough. And the troops even used to sneak up on the flight deck and sleep in the trucks because they had some air conditioning. They'd open the windows and the doors, but they'd have to stop because of safety reasons. We'd hate someone to get out of his truck and walk over for a bit of fresh air and disappear into the organ. We couldn't have that. So there was lack of space generally all round, especially for 450 troops. How do you feed an extra 450 troops efficiently and keep up water to them? The Navy loves limers. Now, I must check out what the recipe is for limers, but I'm sure it's limes and a lot of sugar. And down in the engine room, where it was over 110 degrees Fahrenheit, gallons of it, milk urns would be carried down into the engine room. And the stokers deserved everything they could get, because in there it was virtually impossible to work. Sometimes they worked for 20 minutes to go up and get some fresh air for 10. So it was hard work. And as the ships went further north, it got harder. The other thing was weapon safety. The Navy grew up on weapon safety. Every weapon goes into a locker under lock and key. Every bit of ammunition goes into a locker, lock and key. But with 450 armed troops on board, Navy were very, very, very scared that they'd have a misfire. I know of no misfires, but to keep the troops in their high use of weapons, the back of the flight deck became a rifle range, and the Army went out there and will shoot off magazines, boxes of ammo, and the Navy guys are saying, well, how come they've got all the ammo and we hardly got any? Can't we have a shoot too? Sometimes they let them, but not very often. Because food, to keep fresh food and frozen food available for the troops was very difficult, especially with such a lack of space. The cargo deck, the flight deck was covered in vehicles, and the hangar had tons and tons of stores in it. And amongst those stores was usually sleeping people. The sailors didn't like being the sea daddy to half a dozen or a dozen, 2 dozen things in green. And things in green used to get lost. And things in green would be sent away to find the golden rivet. Don't think they ever found the golden rivet. But There was one, I believe. I never found it. Anyway, there was only one ship I found it in. That was HMAS Banks. And my embarrassment, they had a golden ribbon. Because all the army wanted was a beer mission. Think of the amount of beer that had to be taken on board. In fact, on a Qantas flight, the staff on the aircraft didn't know what to do with all the empty, so they put it in a toilet. In fact, when the toilet was opened in Sydney, you couldn't go into it. It was ceiling high and empty cans. Bill mentioned hammocks. Beautiful type of bedding, if you know how to rig it properly. Took 10 days to get the green machine organised in how to rig a hammock and how to sleep in a hammock without being seasick. And seasickness was another problem. The sick bay was overwhelmed with green machines because they didn't understand what steel doors were or steel hatches. Whang! The sick bay ran out of sticky plaster. Right, but look, the whole thing was fantastic. Sydney did 25 voyages and perfected to get up there in 10 days, unload in 1 or 2 and go back again. In company on 6 occasions was the mighty Duchess. 3 occasions was the Parramatta. HMAS Melbourne for 3. Vampire for 6. And I know there's a couple of veterans of Vampire here, which is fantastic. Vendetta, she did 3. Yarra 4. Derwent 3. Stuart 2. Swan 2. Torrens 1. And HMAS Anzac, the training ship. She got 3 days' notice to go to Vietnam. She came into Sydney on Friday night, and who wasn't duty ended up at the Rock and Roll Hotel. Every Navy man here will tell his wonderful wife what the Rockers was like. In fact, the girls at the Rockers knew the ship's program before anyone else and said to the Anzac guys, "Oh, you're going to Vietnam." There was no, we're going to Jervis Bay. Anyway, Monday morning, early hours Monday morning, they set sail for JB. Instead of turning starboard, they turned to port. They joined Sydney and went to Vietnam. They weren't prepared. Victuals were short. In fact, one of the crew members, great mate of mine, was complaining about only 1 egg for breakfast. God damn. They did pick up extra supplies on Manus Island before going on, and some supplies came across the deck from HMAS Sydney. I did mention Torrens. She did 1. The one ship that doesn't get enough publicity is the Jeparit. The Jeparit was taken up from trade and she did 42 trips, 14 days at sea on average, 4 days to unload. They took aircraft, tanks, 8 armoured personnel carriers, trucks and a few green machines. But Jeparit was brilliant. She took 173,000 tonnes of cargo and vehicles. Boonaroo did 2, which isn't a lot, but was very, very important, especially ammunition. So it was just amazing. In that time, Sydney steamed 345,000 nautical miles, took 16,000 troops to and from Vietnam, 5,700 tonnes of cargo, and 2,375 vehicles. The flight deck was just crammed with vehicles, even landing craft and a couple of aircraft during that time, and helicopters. The other major commitment to Vietnam was ships attached to the 7th Fleet. And the 4 ships were Vendetta, Hobart, Perth and Brisbane over those 7 years. I had the privilege to be on board Perth. Vendetta, she did one deployment to the 7th Fleet. She steamed 39,000 nautical miles. She fired 13,709 4.5-inch ammunition. Now, her ammunition had to be made in Australia or bought from the UK and had to be transported to Subic Bay with barrels to go into the 4.5 turrets. One of the gun crew of that mighty vessel is here. Barney, where are you, mate? Over the back there. Barney's just written a lovely history of the Vendetta and the fantastic crew, captain, the Big E, Eric Johnson. Barney's had a couple of his stories there. She's been published by the Naval Historical Society. Please read it. It's a wonderful story about a wonderful ship and also a wonderful captain. Big E, he was a wonderful man. Some of you would have served in Darryl, and he was in charge of our operations ashore in Darryl. HMAS Hobart did 3 deployments. She had to do 1,400,000 nautical miles. She fired 42,000 rounds of 5-inch. Perth did 3 deployments. She steamed 149,000 nautical miles and fired 30,700 rounds of ammunition. 5-inch, they were big, heavy, bloody things. I know, because we used to have to carry the damn things off from the replenishment point to go down in the magazines. In fact, I was in a magazine and one of the troops above me, we were handling down by hand instead of the lift, and someone slipped. And his 5-inch shell passed my head and heading towards the magazine, and I thought, I've got 3 seconds to shoot my father. It didn't go bang, thank goodness. Anyway, Perth did a marvellous job. Brisbane as well, 2 deployments, 65,000 nautical miles and 15,600 rounds. Now, we used to keep a tape in the operations room. We'd work out how much a 5-inch round was, and we'd convert that into Holden car. How many rounds made a brand new Holden Commodore? Oh, we had a lot of Holdens. Pity we didn't. The important part of that organisation was handing over to the next ship, and there was a weight. It was the bottom of a 5-inch shell, polished and everything, top and bottom, the handle in a minute. And the skipper of the ship leaving deployment would hand it to the next one. I'd love to find where the weight is. Hopefully it's in safekeeping somewhere. The clearance diving team did a brilliant job. Absolutely brilliant. They were the front of the whole thing. When you read about their operations blowing up ordnance all over South Vietnam, and some of the photos are amazing, and they just go on ahead, oh yes, I can blow that up. Yeah, I love blowing up things. Oh, fantastic. Oh, look, what's this bang? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. The RN helicopter flight, right up the front in Iroquois. They flew 33,000 hours. And when you look at one of the helicopters that crashed, an Iroquois with a pilot, the co-pilot and 2 crew, you wouldn't believe they walked away from that crash or dragged himself away from it. And a very good friend, Andy Craig, lives here in Brisbane. He survived that. You look at the photo, how the hell did he? So they were right up front getting shot at. And also the RN attachment to 9 Squadron of the RAF, same thing. 4,908 hours they flew in combat against the Viet Cong in the North Vietnam. I had the pleasure to be a sailor. Jack. I'll put on my cap. No, it doesn't fit. My head's got bigger. Cap's shrunk. Anyway, Jack, I hope you don't mind not as handsome as you, sir. So, I was sitting on the quarterdeck of HMAS Perth at my 21st birthday. On the quarterdeck, port side, just on sunset, thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing here? I'm 21, I've got a girl, well, absolutely gorgeous girl, friend in Geelong. My parents are in Colac, and what in the hell am I doing here? The executive officers came down and joined me. I'd had a couple of beers, my beer issue, 2 cans per man perhaps. This was during the ceasefire. Ceasefire was all right for us at sea, but what the hell was going on ashore wasn't a ceasefire. I'm sitting there, minding my own business, saying, what the hell am I doing here? And the executive officer sat down next to me. Now, he had had a few more than me, and he was in the wardroom. And he sat down and he wished me a happy birthday. And he said, Darryl, why does everyone hate me? I said, sir, if it wasn't such a prick, they would like you. Excuse my language. For the next 3 weeks I avoided him because I had a special piece of paper written on my behalf called a CW warrant. What the hell's a CW warrant? It's a commission warrant paper. So they thought I might become an officer. So I thought to myself, next day I thought, oh, I've got to avoid the XO because his signature might be on the bottom of this piece of paper sometime or another. Anyway, 3 weeks later, he mustered up and said, HMA Neild, I do apologise for not wishing a happy birthday on the 24th. Sorry I didn't see you. Happy birthday 24th. I'm thinking to myself, he's a nice guy. He's not as bad as I thought he was. Yes, so I eventually made me an officer. We must remember on this day that 6 died in action of our Navy team. 16 were wounded in action from a Navy team. 2 were killed by accident or misadventure, and 7 were injured in accidents or misadventure. And I must say, lest we forget, we left them behind, well, we brought them home, but not in a way that would get you a beer issue. So we must remember those people today. It was great fun for a young guy. I didn't understand any of the politics of the war. You know, we just had a job to do, so we went and did it. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about it. And thank you, Phil. Now, can I have my speech back? Oh, no. Anyway, thank you. Oh, you want that? Thank you.
Well, that really covered it. And we'll forgive him for being a Mexican. Just about everybody standing here will have some stage served on A Sydney, whether it was 3, 4, 5, whatever. I had the pleasure of serving on Sydney 3, and even though we gave it the unflattering name of the Cockroach Hilton, it remains a part of your heart, and we loved the old girl. Yes, and she was hot, uncomfortable, but we still loved her. Phil joined the Army Reserve as a member of the Australian Army Corps, as an armoured vehicle driver and then as a vehicle commander, and was commissioned in 1986 before transferring to the regular army in 1989. He was discharged in 2011 with the rank of Major